Hello, it is time once again to enter the chat with Colette and Matt. It's a weekly conversation about the most important thing in the history of all human civilization. That's right. It's video games.
Video games. Or as we used to say back in the Destructoid days, vidya games.
Vidya game. Now, did that come from you guys, or was it internet stuff, slang? Or
it was
where
so
was
long
that?
ago, I'm honestly not 100% sure. But I just know that it was either vidya games or the vidya.
The vidya.
Which I thought was pretty darn funny at the time. And apparently it's still funny.
It's still funny. Still funny. I'm Matt Silverman over here, joined, of course, as always, by Colette Bennett. You heard her voice. She's her. How's it going on this fine evening? We're not going to say when it's top secret when we really record this, but when you're hearing this, it's probably Friday. Maybe you're cruising into your weekend, but it's classified when we do this for real.
Yes, big secret. Big secret-o. I am well. Thank you for asking. I have had a fun day in that I'm always happy when I get to write about games at work, because when I moved on to doing general news outlets, bigger news outlets, rather than just working for specified game companies, game developing. Why can't I freaking talk? Game journalism outlets. It's like getting bigger outlets to write about games used to be hard. I have to holler out to places like Axios, who are like kick ass at breaking news, but then have like dedicated. Now they have a dedicated gaming newsletter.
That's fairly recent. It's good, right?
So good. Well, yeah, Steven Totillo, who was the old editor in chief of Kotaku, actually writes it with another person who I know. Right. I don't know her as well, but when I saw he was doing it, I was like, oh, so cool. He's a veteran. Like, he's been around since my Destructoid days. So, great voice. But it's so nice because it's done in that kind of Axios style. So super clean, super easy to parse, interesting from like a business perspective too. So I was like, oh, it's so cool to see like them and like Business Insider and, Washington Post and all these places that like a decade ago would like not have touched games with a 10-foot pole. And now a lot of them are covering it. Anyway, I'm getting off the point. The point is that
I love the point. But before you go on, I just have to say how much I agree with you, of course. And it would be like the New York Times being like, we don't cover TV. Like, it's just not important. It's like, well, of course, at some point it became very important. We have to, it's culture, you have to cover it.
Right.
I remember, not to throw any shade, of course, but I remember being told that at previous publications that like, I don't know exactly what it was, the logic was, but like that there was no advertising money in game coverage. This was years ago. But still, like, well within the, like, you and I did not come into the media in the newspaper times. We were always digital,
right?
And even at the during the rise of digital, I was like, hey, maybe what? There's a lot of cool things happening in video games, especially with the appearance of Minecraft on the scene. When Minecraft arrived, I was like, holy shit, this thing is amazing. And the guy is like making it in the open, and for $12 you can play it now, but it's not done. That's unbelievable. We got to write about this. And I remember being told like, it's just not what we do. There's no money in it. Advertisers don't want to be with games. And I was like, I don't know about that,
But that was a different era. You have to remember.
Totally.
I mean, I don't know what year that was of your life, but like in my life, one really cool thing for me is that having been kind of, gotten a similar attitude or, like being shrugged off, like, oh yes, Colette is the newsroom nerd, as it was at CNN. I had a very judgy boss who, may God rest her soul at Chick-fil-A where she is now. But, and anyway,
she went from CNN to Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A, yes, she did.
Like frying chicken, or
no. That would have been the future I wish for her. But instead, she went on to do like some sort of, some sort of management. VP shit. I don't know who knows what it is. But anyway, but yeah, like, it's gone kind of from a time of like, oh, no one wants to talk about that. That's nerdy. You're the token nerd, to like, games make money. Games make a lot of money. And like, no matter what direction you're coming at it from, if you are any kind of news outlet that is interested in what makes money, and let's be honest, like most major outlets care about that, you have to care about games now. Like you have to.
But it's so, you fully agree, of course, but like games have been making money since 1980,
I know, but I don't think they've ever made as much money as they make now. I could be wrong.
No, you're certainly right about that, but it is just strange. It's just strange.
It's all strange. I mean, I could like literally write a book on the evolution of how like video games like made you a social pariah, like when I was like, in my teens, to how today, like everyone plays games, and I no longer worry about saying in public, like I play games, because almost always someone's like, oh, me too. Or, even if it's like phone games or, whatever, like everyone plays something mostly.
We have talked about this, and I'm really fascinated by your journey there, because my recollection of growing up was like, that's all we did. And it wasn't a solitary nerdy thing. It was like, oh, you're having a sleepover? Well, I guess we'll be playing Super Bomberman the entire night, or GoldenEye. Like, we didn't do anything else. Like, we played outside, we played basketball.
How old were you?
Not before teenage. Like, I'm thinking like 10 to 12, and then well into our teens,
But see, that is the age in which video games are okay. I'm talking about when I moved into my 20s and 30s. And, so that was, a couple of decades ago. And it's like, oh,
I guess.
Like, yeah, there have been I've had some interesting experiences over time. And, I'm sure over time I'll share most of them in one context or another on the podcast. But I guess the TLDR is many years of my gaming life, gaming was not cool and not okay.
It was not okay for an adult to
correct.
Play game. Yeah. Okay. That's an important distinction that I was missing there. And I do find that interesting. I guess, I don't have any strong memories of being social with video games in my young, or in my 20s. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't something like, hey everyone, like, who wants to play video games? It was just like, no, I just love games, and I'm just going to go home and play, Oblivion or whatever. Like, that's it wasn't something I needed to deal with in any social context. And right, so coming out of a childhood where it's like, we're all playing games together, then you're a grown up and you still play games by yourself, and now we're big grown ups, and now we talk about video games on the internet, for a hobby, and also some now for a living, for sure, for you. You're writing the stories now. And you have been for a long time, obviously.
For a long time, yeah, I have. It's interesting. It's also interesting to hear from a perspective of someone who, like, games were never used as a point of shame, whereas like I had many experiences where people did things or said things that I walked away feeling ashamed that I liked games, or like nerdy things or whatever. So to be honest, it's kind of nice for me to know that that's not everybody's experience, because when I've talked to other gamers over time, I almost always have heard similar stories to mine, and I haven't heard a lot of stories like yours. So that like does my heart good.
It's like, really interesting.
Today's young person, today's 10-year-old, 15-year-old, I don't think they'll ever really encounter that shame about games like often, because it's not, the stigma around them is weakened so much.
And also we have the internet, and so it's like every, just trying to like parse it as a social numbers game, right? If you have 100 kids, and a lot of them probably like games, but they can't see each other so they just think they're nerdy. You can apply this to anything, comic books, sci-fi, I don't know, whatever you think is nerdy or whatever. But any of those single kids can just open up the homepage of YouTube and see millions of people exactly like you,
right,
loving something as much as you, probably even more than you do, and then you view that and you're like, oh, okay, I am part of something else, and we didn't have that.
No,
and I guess
like
the
if
other
your
thing
friends didn't play it,
yes,
you were alone, basically.
Exactly.
And my friends, I mean, I didn't have a lot of friends anyway, but the friends I had didn't really play games. I didn't really find other gamers until I was about 20.
That we grew up in a time where your friends, your neighborhood friends are your only point of cultural reference,
which is wild. So wild to think about, compared to how, younger people are probably growing up today. And this is one of the things I think where the internet is great, that, you have this portal to find people who like absolutely anything you like and connect with them. And that is definitely something that, you and I did not grow up with.
Yes, and it comes with pros and cons, of course, but I am very much in that camp, in what you just said, of like it is a net positive for the most part, social ills aside, with the isolation that comes with social media and the difficulties in communication there, but yeah. And then the only other thing I wanted to touch on here, because I do find it interesting, is that I must have. My identity as a young adult was not connected to games, if that makes sense. So I definitely am and always was a nerd and game lover. I was very infatuated with like the lore or the world building of a universe like a Star Wars or a Lord of the Rings or a game or whatever. But I was not. But I did not wear that on my sleeve, and therefore probably never. I could never be the target of that ridicule, because I was probably like, I don't know, the hell did I do? I was probably the music guy or the the whatever, and that there's usually no stigma there, so I was in the clear. I was not a target in that way. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe I did that purposely, subconsciously, hid the nerdiness, and just enjoyed it on my own terms. That's probably what went down. And so do you feel like you were there times or moments where you're like, hey world, I'm super nerdy, and the world was like, get the fuck out of here. You're the worst.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, high school especially, although I think I learned to hide it really quickly. In some ways, in other ways, I was like, because I don't think games necessarily is the only definition of my, eccentricities. Like I think that I didn't have to say I liked games for them to be like, you're weird.
There were other dimensions that could also be targeted there, I guess.
Yeah, like I think I actually repressed my gaming side quite a bit in my 20s. And it really wasn't until I stumbled on, like the realization that I wanted to write about games, and then stumbled upon like this online world where I could write for blogs about games and people would give me money. And I was just like, what?
It's wild. It was
quite wild.
Everything that you are, and I don't think you'll take issue with the word obsessed. Everything that you are obsessed with is like, is so valuable and so respected today on the internet, and it just was the opposite of that.
Yeah, shit changes.
It's not just a change, it's a complete 180 in 15, 20 years ish, maybe a little longer here, but
you're completely and totally right. And yes, that is what it is. And there's a little bit of like saltiness, like, oh man, really? Like, like the same thing I got made fun of for in high school is the thing that now everyone thinks is cool. But then on the other hand, I'm kind of like, well, I've had a career because of my love of games now for almost 14 years. So I'm like,
well, and you didn't give up on it. You weren't like, oh, everyone hates this, so I guess I'll be an accountant.
It was not even an option. I mean, it was one of my greatest loves and probably always will be. So,
but what a tragedy that would have been. And I'm sure there are other people, and it's not just nerdiness or games. I'm sure there are countless stories of like, wow, I really love this thing, and the world told me it was bad or lame to love it, so I forced myself to do other things, and now I regret that or miss that or missed my chance to be something.
Yeah.
So to your point, being able to see others online today in the 21st century, it must be helping so many people. I mean, this is the point of the other show that I make, the Internet Culture Show. And it applies also to other, deeper things like sexual proclivities and fetishes and kinks and things like that. And also like, we're just passionate about these other things. And I thought I was weird. And then, wow, there's millions like me. And it's comical to say, oh, there's other gamers out there. Like, that's so silly. But in the dimensions that we cover on the other show, it's quite extraordinary when it's like, oh, there really are probably like only 1,000 of us who do XYZ, but like, we're all here. We're all in the Facebook group now. We're all in the subreddit or whatever. And that is rad. It's rad to see that and talk to those people.
I think that connection in general is one of the things that we as human beings have the deepest craving for, whether or not we're aware of it. So I think, to be seen and be heard, to be yourself is like so valuable. And I mean, I've definitely found my community, and I'm honestly delighted that, even though there's a lot of gamers out there that give gamers a bad name, I still think that there are so many that are great and that you can share that joy with, So
have we talked about the moniker, the label gamer? Because I fucking hate it because of its baggage, its cultural baggage. And I never refer to myself as I'm a gamer. I always say, I love games. I am a game enthusiast. I love game mechanics. I love video games. I love the art form of games. But I never refer to myself as a gamer because I feel like that word is from the 90s and has Monster Energy drink poured on it. You know what I mean? Well, what do you think about that?
It's really funny you should say that. So I had a friend who wrote a fairly high-profile article about the word gamer. Okay. And this article is quite a bit older now, but it was quite interesting because I think at the time I really reflected on that word gamer too, and like what that really meant. And it kind of reminds me, to be honest, of like I hesitate to say this because I'm like, oh, I'm about to say this, but it like kind of reminds me of like the word like Christian, where you're like Christian, and like, if you're anything like me, it's really easy to like look at, things that make it into the news that bad quote unquote Christians do, or things that, are pretty ugly, and be like, well, all Christians are this. And I think, gaming is similar in that it's really easy for people to look at the bad quote unquote gamers and say, well, that's gamers. Mm-hmm. So I too am totally on your page with that. I do not really identify. I'm like, oh, I'm a gamer. Like, I'll just be like, yeah, I like games, so same as you. Also the point in time at which this kind of difference started to occur, really like clarify and crystallize in my mind, was actually around the time that Gamergate was happening. And I think after Gamergate happened, I could never really call myself a gamer again.
That's exactly, I think that's a very important inflection point. And also just even take away the like, oh, the bad things or the bad people in the news. That's important. But even if you take that away, it's about stereotypes. So if someone says, I'm a Christian, they might be the most like progressive, secular, forward-thinking person you could meet, but there is stereotypical baggage that accompanies gamer Christian, and I share your hesitation. We don't want to make assumptions or perpetuate stereotypes about anyone's identification or beliefs, but it's an example that makes sense to me. I understand what you're saying when you make that analogy, and it's I guess the point that I want to say, and I think you're saying it too, is like, it's a real shame that the word Christian has stereotypical baggage, because like, it seems like a lovely belief system that is very complicated by its baggage, and similarly, like gamer is perceived poorly by by the masses, and so it's.
I mean, I think it was kind of. I think it was interesting because I think it was kind of dicey before Gamergate, but then like I think after Gamergate, it just got so different.
And also like, getting very semantic, a gamer is by definition a person who plays games. So is a baseball player a gamer? Yes, they are. So. But like culturally and semiotically, or however you want to say it, no one would think that or say that or use it in that context. And so it's a confusing, misleading, stereotype baggage type of word that it perhaps has run its course or feels outdated in a world, we've talked about this at length on this show, in a world where I can play, Candy Crush, and you can play Civilization 6 with 40 DLCs and mods mapped in there, so that you're keeping a spreadsheet to make sure you're optimizing your what. We're both gamers, but we are not the same people. You know what in terms of what we are passionate about. And I've said this before. It's like, I'm a movie buff. I'm a cinemaphile. I love the Marvel movie. Like, enjoy your Marvel movies, but like, I'm sure film historians would take issue with like, who is loving the literature of this art form. So it's too broad a word with too much baggage, I guess, is to
for sure. Yeah.
No,
you're
blab
right.
Too much about the same thing over and over again. But I do find it interesting.
Yeah, no, it is. It's definitely something that I think anybody that identifies as a lover of games could speculate on and have lots of thoughts on. But for the sake of brevity and getting over all the things we want to talk about on the podcast, I'll move on to what I was going to say way earlier and then got sidetracked. Was that today at work I work for Yahoo News. If I have never said that on the podcast, I'm a senior producer for them, and I worked on a piece today that was about Netflix because, as some of you listening may already know, Netflix has been slowly kind of edging this year towards the idea of building a streaming service for games that is under the umbrella of their current service, meaning that you wouldn't pay any extra money to stream games, just like you would stream a movie or a show, which is wild, right?
It's question though, and we will get into this in the discussion. Is that I'm confused, and you likely have more information than I do. My layman's brief casual understanding was that Netflix said publicly, or something was leaked or whatever, they're like, we're getting into the games business. And the world assumed instantly that they would be creating streaming systems, architecture, or platforms to stream games, because Netflix streams movies, we're going to stream games. And so my question for you is, well, I'll back up. Then we saw Netflix releasing like companion games and mobile games, and then acquiring studios, which you're about to talk about. And then I think it was like, oh, right, Netflix is getting into the games business to make games that are interesting to the Netflix audience and perhaps adjacent to their existing properties, a la, hey, here's the Stranger Things game,
right,
to go for the Stranger Things fans. So my question is, so we're seeing that happen right now, today.
Correct.
My question is a streaming game platform, as you described, is that confirmed? Is that known?
Oh yeah, they verbally said it. Actually,
Great.
that was in the feature I worked on is not live. It'll be live tomorrow. I wanted to do some extra reporting, so I reached out to some people. But yeah, they did formally make an announcement, which I actually had not been aware of the details until today.
That's much bigger news than I perceived it to be.
It is, yeah. They're so basically, this didn't happen today. Today, or actually late yesterday, the announcement came out that they had purchased Night School, which is a small indie developer responsible for the award-winning game Oxenfree, which is terrific. But what's interesting, I think, about Netflix is that I wanted to talk to some experts today because I was like, what if you're an analyst of the video game industry, or what if you're a investor, that like raises, venture capital for indie studios, like to succeed, like what would you think? And so I reached out, and the latter is what I found. It was a really lovely person whose name I will not speak right now. It'll be in the article, which I should share in our notes maybe. But at any rate, he was like, Netflix has just got, despite their big name, despite their power, they have just got such a big challenge ahead of them if they want to do this, because despite that, big name, they're already competing with fully fleshed out streaming services like Xbox Game Pass, which, if you have it, it's quite good. I've enjoyed it. And like the nice thing about it is that you don't have to own an Xbox to use Xbox Game Pass. Like we have it, and I download games on my computer using the Xbox Game Pass app. So, is it perfect? Of course not. But like, that concept is already out there from, one of the biggest names in the gaming industry, right? And, you've got other
Not just a concept, they've done the deals and done the work, both internally and externally, to offer a library of high quality games that go back, however long Microsoft's been in the games business, 20 years, whenever the first Xbox came out. So like, it's how do you start from zero in 2021 and say like, subscribe to our service too? I think your analyst is correct. An enormous challenge.
In my chat today with him, we both kind of expressed skepticism. And then, I said, I think that it makes more sense that rather than trying to appeal to the core gamer base first, they would try to appeal to the people that are already watching Netflix and are going, oh, neat, Netflix does that now. Some of them may not be like the core gamer, quote unquote, but like in the past, for instance, I've tried services like PlayStation Now where you can play like older PS2 games, but like really to me, where it's really at, and this is where Netflix would have to find a way to compete truly, is to be able to open up Game Pass, and instead of trying to decide which of like the newest releases to buy to spend my $60 to $80 on, I just get to pay $20 a month and try all of them and decide what I like.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And play it. And then when I'm finished with it, I don't have to go sell it or anything like that. Like I can just, keep, play, and then I can open it whenever I want to. Do I own it? No. Like that argument has been around forever. Like, oh, we don't own games anymore. Who fucking cares?
That's a different story
like,
for
it's
sure.
Now like if no one is like, oh, like I want to watch The Never Ending Story. Oh my God. Like I don't own a copy. It's probably on a streaming service somewhere. If it's not, it's on YouTube. Get over that. You can rent it for $2. Like I don't really feel like that ownership of stuff is quite the level it used to be anymore. And I mean, games have become so digital. Like to me as a gamer, this is the ideal setup. But like, I get what Netflix is gunning for. And this is no insult to Night School, because I think that what they've done is really terrific. I'm not sure exactly how Netflix is planning to use Night School's smarts and approach. I don't know if they want them to specifically design games that will only appear on Netflix. Probably. Like I'm assuming that would be the reason why they'd try to acquire them. Of course, like you have to have a draw, right? You can't just be like, oh, we have all the same big, AAA games to offer that, Game Pass does. Like they need a better strategy. So for all I know, maybe their strategy is, we have, Oxenfree 2 and it's only on Netflix, whatever.
Yes.
I don't know. But like, I mean, am I going to say they can't do it? No, of course not. I don't think it's fair to ever rule that. But I think that, my interviewee and I both were like, boy, you got a big challenge ahead of you.
Yeah.
Big challenge.
It's enormous, but there's two challenges that I would like to parse here. One is you need the games. And
you need the games.
I tend to call this essential content. I'm actually giving a little talk about it tomorrow. I have a little spiel that I do at conferences, mostly virtual these days. And it's the thesis is like, people on the internet, it's mostly focused around content creators, like internet creators. And it's like, there are so many podcasts and YouTube series and Twitch streamers or whatever that's like, I need this in my life. And if it went away, I would be sad. So I need to support it in some way. You're subscribing, you're Patreoning, whatever you're doing. And this is not a new concept. We've been paying for content forever. It just wasn't from randoms on the internet. It was from media conglomerates. And so, point being, Netflix needs to create essential content. And they learned their lesson. That. They've done it because they didn't just say, we used to mail you DVDs from Blockbuster. Now we're going to just put those DVDs online and stream it. They're like, no. We have to make original Netflix exclusive stuff. And it has to be best in class. So we're going to make, the best sci-fi show, around, and it's going to be a big hit. And they make a lot of stuff, and some of it's crap and some of it is a huge cultural phenomenon, and that is working for them. So point being, they need to make games that people can't live without, that are so culturally important, that become so culturally important that people must care about them. And
own them.
You're right. One path to that end is to acquire studios who make great games.
Right.
As they have done.
And another point that was brought up today in my conversation of researching this feature was, Netflix has played a very long game. A perfect example is they have a massive show success on their hands right now with Squid Game, which is kind of like trending everywhere and people are talking about it, right? Squid Game is a Korean drama, which if you are a fan of Korean stuff, as I am, that they have had Korean drama on that platform now for years. Right. Years. They have all the romances, they have all the action movies, they have all the procedural dramas. And I don't know how many of those they must have cast out there before one of them made that hit.
Totally.
So to me, and I do admire this, they're willing to play the long game. So
long game. And someone there was like, you know what? Korean TV and film is coming. So let's invest now. And then when everyone's like, yeah, all these shows, have you heard about these shows? They're so great. Where are they? They're all on Netflix. Yep. Same with anime. Not like anime is like a brand new phenomenon, but to your points earlier about being a nerd in the closet and then coming out, we're all out. And now we all love anime. And where is it? Netflix. And where's the new cool hotness happening? Oh, Netflix is making original anime too. So they know it. They know what they're doing.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's on one hand, I'm kind of I don't know Netflix. But on the other hand, I am kind of I saw them investing in, Korean content and in anime a long time ago,
So let me ask you. So we can be reasonably confident that whatever their strategy will be to create, I can't live without this content. That nothing's for sure, but we can bank on that. But the other question here is a technological question, and you were sort of alluding to it of I'm watching Netflix and I'm just scrolling through my smart TV, watching what's on? And here's a game. I didn't know Netflix made games. This looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
Then what? How are we going to, and I have many thoughts about this, what is the user experience and the quality experience of a game streaming to a device that is probably, a smart TV that is, not that good, it's not very powerful, on a Wi-Fi connection that does fine with streaming video, because streaming video can buffering. Okay, we got a couple 30 seconds of runway,
but
and
that's
play
not
the
how
video.
It works. That's not how games work.
That's not how games work.
So it hasn't. I don't know a lot about Stadia, as far as performance. Isn't that been one of the big complaints though with Stadia, that it doesn't run well?
Yeah. Well, so if you'll permit me, I do want to I would love to get into this briefly, and I'm not an expert. I don't know much, but I'll briefly say that in my sort of triangle of gaming, I'm a PC gamer first, and I also really enjoy the portability of handheld on Switch. And as we've discussed here, I've been annoyed by very good, high quality games that really should not be very demanding on Switch. And then you buy them, no refunds allowed on Switch, and then they run like shit. And it's like, why? Yeah. This shouldn't be happening. They're poorly optimized, they're poorly ported, and that's frustrating. So I've been really kind of obsessing of like, well, I do a lot of in-home streaming via Moonlight, which is an open source version of NVIDIA's Game Stream, and I can stream it out to my TVs using NVIDIA Shields, and it's amazing when you line up the pipelines perfectly. And I'm like, oh, I can just stream this to my phone and get a little phone controller. And then I've got a Steam Deck for cheap. I can buy all my games on Steam, and I don't have to pay the Switch tax, and they're going to run better, and I can play them anywhere in their house. And that works 98% great, except for there's a weird refresh rate inconsistency between monitors and phones, and that's a whole shit show. I'm saying all this to say that I'm very invested and fascinated and interested in this technology, and I've set things up in my home to do it as good as it can be. And then I'm like, getting frustrated about the phone streaming issues that I've been having, and I'm like, you know what? Like, Game Pass has cloud streaming now, and basically there's 100 games on PC Game Pass at any given time. Most of them are cloud enabled, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I could bypass this whole in-home, one monitor is doing this and another device is doing that. They're incompatible. What if I just stream it from the cloud? And if it's pretty much as good as the in-home, but I don't have to have my computer on, maybe Game Pass, maybe to everything we're talking about, maybe $15 a month on, getting as many games as you want, trying as many games as you want and streaming them all from the cloud. Yeah. Maybe that's the answer. And maybe this is the future. And maybe this is going to be the third pillar of my video game life. And I signed up and I tried the cloud streaming. And let me tell you, it fucking sucks shit. And I'm not saying that to shit on Microsoft. I think they are building the most compelling argument for the future of gaming. And when they get it right, I'm pretty sure I'll be, a Windows PC, which is Microsoft, /Steam /Game Pass kind of person. But as of today, on a very good Wi-Fi connection, doing all the things that technologically should be done, it's just really bad. And I don't mean I'm a very particular nitpicky person. I'm saying really not good, not playable at all. And I didn't do exhaustive testing. So I'm saying all this to say Microsoft is light years ahead of everyone else, I think, in terms of value and game catalog and technology. I hear Stadia is very good. They just don't have the games, or you have to pay for Stadia and buy the games. You don't get a subscription to anything. That's evolving, I think. But, and also I will say that, perhaps if I was streaming from the cloud on a wired Ethernet connection to my computer, meaning I have a decent computer, but I'm going to play Doom, the modern Doom from the cloud and stream it. I suspect that will be probably okay, but that doesn't apply to me, because I could just download Doom from Game Pass and then play it locally for the same price. Yeah. So I'm looking for the cloud solution. And I guess I'm saying it ain't there. And then now we're saying well, here's Netflix. They're going to stream from the cloud. I'm like, to what? From what? To what device? What controller? What phone? What I'm learning, I can't even get things to stream in my own house on my own Wi-Fi, flawlessly. You're telling me Netflix is gonna stream to anything, everything, and I think that's a long way out.
Yeah,
if
that's fair.
But maybe people won't care. Maybe people will be like, or maybe they'll invest in games that are very simple or very static so that there won't be a lot of motion or frame perfect, shooting that needs to be happening in certain games or whatever.
Yeah,
to stereotype games.
It's hard to say. I mean, like for myself, for instance, the stuff I played using Xbox Game Pass, I don't think any of it was really like I don't tend to go for like AAAs that often anyway, but like I don't really feel like much I played I really noticed much about like stuttering or frame rate issues or anything.
But were you streaming from the cloud or were you downloading locally and just enjoying on PC?
I was streaming I streamed a few from the cloud, but mostly I downloaded them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're downloading from Game Pass, then that's basically Steam. Like you're loading all the data locally on your hard drive, and you're having
really
a blast.
A challenge, yeah.
So if you recall, if you were downloading nothing and just hopping into a game on the cloud, were you on your wired desktop or were you on a phone?
My desktop is not wired, which is a long story. But the short version is that the router is in the other room, in the living room, and
I'm calling the police right now. I'm
you
sorry.
You should. It's
this
terrible.
Is a crime.
It's really terrible. Like, and we rent the place that we're currently in, and like when we found out how much it was going to cost for us to run that cable through and then like get permission for it, and then they were like, hey, so that's going to be $700, and we were like, Jesus Christ. God. And like I can't go set up my office, my PC in our living room right now. We just don't have that room.
That sucks.
Yeah. So it's rough, right? Because it's like obviously for things like streaming, that would be, the most ideal.
Yeah, you're still streaming on a Wi-Fi connection, and you're doing pretty damn well considering you must have good Wi-Fi.
We have a brand spanking, new, strong, fast computer that my husband, helpfully helped to build. And he didn't build it himself, but he went through a service where he got to choose every single part and have them assembled.
But best computer in the world means nothing if you got a choke point on the Wi-Fi network. So you must be tricked out on the on the Wi-Fi router or whatever else. You've got it set up well. Hopefully.
I am not the person doing the setting, so I cannot be like, oh yeah, we got this and this. But like, yes, I never at home am like, God, the internet is slow. No, never.
Totally. Yeah.
Never. That doesn't happen here. So that sounds so privileged. That doesn't happen here.
Yeah. I acknowledge that these are all first world problems that we all have, but I also say like, this is aside from working and taking care of my children, like this is all I do. And so I really care a lot about setting things up the best that they can be. And I also get very frustrated and annoyed when things are not quite working. And so, I'm glad you have the horsepower in the machine that you're on right now, but also it's not going to waste, with the Wi-Fi situation.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I totally get that. I was going to say something else and I totally forgot what it was.
Maybe so. Perhaps you were streaming some excuse me. It used to be called xCloud, and that was a whole confusing setup too. I had not realized that the cloud service moved into Game Pass, which is actually very good and smart to bring all the things under a thing called Game Pass. That is,
I think so too.
Wise.
Yes, very.
But you were alluding perhaps to you were streaming something from the cloud on a Wi-Fi connection, exactly as I was recently, and you were saying, yeah, seems good.
Yeah, no, it was okay. I mean, perfect? No, I'm sure it wasn't perfect, but
sure.
But good. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's possible. I think it's very possible that we could get into a point where we have a library of games that that's just as comprehensive and gigantic as what we're streaming on, video and services. But I just don't think it's going to be right away. Like, I kind of feel like the internet, the super, super, super fast internet options need to be a little bit more easily accessible. Like,
it's an infrastructure problem. That's the thing.
Right.
Like, talk to rural America. There are, I forget what the stats are these days, but there are shocking numbers of people still using dial-up AOL in this fine country of ours. And how are you going to reach them? Netflix? Like, I mean, it's like putting, you've got a train car full of high-tech goodies, and then you strap it to a horse. It's like, I don't care how good your games or movies are. It's just a fucking horse. You can't get this over to the town with this horse. It's the 1900s over here in terms of broadband infrastructure. So that's a huge barrier to all of this. And again, like, super privileged bullshit coming at you from this neck of the woods, but like, we have gigabit internet and a premium Wi-Fi router, and even then it was a bad time. It was a bad experience. Now, maybe their servers were choked up. Maybe I was in the one part of the house that wasn't amazing. 1,000 factors. But as I have also learned, the device you're on matters, and it's not really horsepower. It's kind of like, hey, is the frame rate and the frame pacing that's being sent to you over the internet, does that match with the screen that you're on? Because if you're on an iPad, it's slightly different from the thing on a Pixel phone, and that stuff is gonna matter. And maybe that's the third rail of the third bar of the triangle here is like, we're going to need device specifications standards for games.
Sure.
And that's usually 60 frames per second is the video game standard, but a lot of games don't run at that, or you're not going to be able to serve that over the internet, or more importantly, like, the refresh rates on many devices are like, oh yeah, it's 59.94 because that is a multiple. Fuck that.
In the words of Matt Silverman, 59 FPS. Fuck that.
But that's because of actually because of film, if I'm not mistaken. Because and this is a whole can of worms that I won't go too deep into. But like, film was shot at 24 frames. It has always been shot at 24 frames per second, but it's actually 23.97 or something like that. Then TV came along, and TV is shot at 30. But televisions have a refresh rate. Old CRT televisions have always had a refresh rate of 60. So when Super Mario came around in the 80s, he ran at 60 frames per second. And I'm not saying that's the dawn of 60 FPS video games, but like, NES runs at 60 frames per second because that's what televisions do.
Right.
And so television programming was shot at 30, which is which multiplies or divides evenly into 60. So your Panasonic CRT television can show you, Cheers and Super Mario, and everything looks great. But what has happened since then is that televisions are like, we can get 60, but we're going to do it at 59.94 because film is at 23.97, and that multiplies into that, and we have to be able to show movies and TV and play games on televisions because that's what people want to do. And so when you plug a console into a television, the console's like, yep, this is a 60 frames game, and we're going to V-sync it to your 59.94, and everything's great because it's one device telling the TV, yep, sync the frames to this thing that is a standard. And what the problem is that if you're sending picture from another device and the television or the console or the box or the Netflix or the Roku or the whatever is outputting at a different rate, there's a mismatch. And that beautiful, this is why people buy consoles. They just plug it in and it plays games.
Exactly.
But what we're talking about here is running a server from, across the world and piping it into your TV or Roku or whatever the fuck that may or may not be running at the correct whatever specifications. And it's a goddamn shit show. And so I guess I'm blabbing about this to say, like, what I think we need here is a standard that's like, hey, you're ready to stream games? Click this button to activate game mode. And then that's going to be like 60.00 hertz, which then gets your 60 frames per second, and everything's just beautiful. It is just this universal standard that everything runs on. That's the answer. But like televisions and other devices will not. I hope to see that come in the next couple of years. Know, with the Steam Decks and the high refresh rate phones that are now on the market. And
could. I mean, we could very well be in that kind of weird, painful place where it's like you're not quite there yet. You're really getting closer, but you're not quite there yet.
I think that's exactly right.
That Nintendo 64 kind of feeling. Like where you're like, yes. At the time you were like, cool. And then like a few years later, you're like, that is ugly as fuck.
Imagine if all these games streaming from Netflix ran like GoldenEye 64 007, which if you have not played that recently, it's rough.
Yeah.
It's a little rough.
Yeah. I hear you. It's great big problems with, I'm sure, great big solutions, but I'm hopeful, I'm hopeful that, I remember, a time when the idea of streaming a video game would have been so alien that I wouldn't even have known what to do with it. I remember a time when my old editor-in-chief at Destructoid was like, I'll never get rid of no, actually, wait, I take it back. There were other people saying that. He was the one that was like, I'm ready to sell everything. I can't wait to go all digital. Mm-hmm. And this was before that was a thing. This was before digital games were really a big deal. Like people still had physical libraries. So I remember that, and so I like to think that there will be a time in which I will get to see, streaming games work this well. I really do hope so. I think it's possible.
It's possible. And it is coming. There's too much money at stake and the world wants it. I'm fully in your there are problems with consumers not owning things. There are issues there. However, I'm very happy to forgo them because I don't want to own CDs and DVDs and game cartridges. I never want to touch those again. I'm fully in agreement with you on that.
Damn them to hell!
And I respect people who care about ownership and want the physical stuff. It's not for me, but I do appreciate what the world they're coming from. And there's two different worlds there. There's one of like, I like touching things and having it on my shelf, and that's fine. But then there's also the philosophical argument of like, games can be deleted. They can be taken down. They can be changed. There is an archival, or what do you call it, a preservation issue with digital only games. There was a bit of a kerfuffle actually very recently. If in the PC gaming communities that I frequent, it's like Steam had some update where it was like there was something about the way Steam updated where very smarter people than us were like, hey, this is going to make it harder for you to roll back to previous versions of a game. And then when people discovered that, they got very upset because sometimes you have a game on Steam and you're like, I love this game. I play it all the time. It's great. And then they update the game and something breaks. Maybe it's a mod, maybe it's a feature. And you're like, shit, I have no way to go back to the previous version. I'm stuck with the broken version now. Mm-hmm. And I tend to be like, give me the newest, give me the latest, give me the shiniest version. I trust you, developer, to give me the best version. And if there's a bug, I'll wait another day and the bug will come out. But I really respect people who are like, no. I bought this in state A, and I would like to continue playing it in this state because that's the way I bought it. Right. Stop forcing me to update. And there's an argument to be made that they are correct.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. I would totally agree with that. Oh, man. A big convo. Well, at any rate, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But in the meantime, we could talk about stuff like, the video games we play now downloaded to our boring systems that are slow.
Boring ass hard drive games.
I don't know if anyone can literally hear me laughing through the whole music. The whole music break. I was just cackling.
I gotta drag all this fucking data around here on my hard drives. What is this? The 1850s? Give me a goddamn break.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to take over so I can talk a little bit about the Actraiser remake. Which
not only do I not mind, I'm really eager to hear your thoughts on this. So please do.
Well, I haven't thought about Actraiser in a pretty long time. But I remember that there was an era of playing games for me that was full of wonder. And one of the games that I felt wonder about was the original Actraiser. Mm-hmm. I think it was probably because it was pretty unlike any other game I had played before it.
Truly.
It's an for those who are not familiar with Actraiser, it's a really interesting hybrid when like hybrids were not as easy to find as they are today. That was a mix of a city building game and a platforming game. Enix was the publisher, which is interesting to note because that was before they rolled into Square and became Square Enix. Mm-hmm. So you played a god, not the god, like God, but a god. And you basically have dominion over this land that needs to be like developed and saved from, evil, of course. Mm-hmm. So in your building sections, you will basically do things like, use your powers of lightning or, to cleanse rocks so you have room for your people to build, their homes or, use your sun to melt the bogs and then they can build. And there are always like these little monster portals and you kind of have to fight off the monsters too. And then when you build out your towns and you get to the point where you need to go to a monster lair, your people will clear the way with your help. And then you'll go down there and it becomes a side-scrolling, platformer, basically, mm-hmm. where mm-hmm. you'll go and you'll fight for them. So as the god, you go down and fight to kill these monsters, which really doesn't make any sense. If I was the god, I would send those motherfuckers to do the work by themselves. But, for some reason, I guess for the sake of the game, I just have to have more of a job than just commanding people around.
The fighting, the character that you are inhabiting is the god, or is it some like hero or messenger? I don't remember.
You're a god.
Like the sword guy. The sword guy is you and you are a god vanquishing monsters. Is that the lore here?
Yeah, more or less. You're a god. It doesn't really ever quantify like more than that. You're a god. Mm-hmm. And this is your land and it's up to you to help to cleanse this land and, help these poor people, to colonize their land and settle on it happily. So I was like, I don't know that I got that far back in the day. I don't think I did. But I remember just thinking, this is neat because it was really unlike anything I had played. And at that point in my gaming career, I had never played like I guess people call them like God Sims or now, right? Where you like, mm-hmm. There's tons of them now, but at the time, I think many others may have existed, but this was the only one I ever came across as like maybe mostly a 9 or 10-year-old.
Yeah, they were mostly PC. I mean, they were the Sim Cities and the populaces of the PC world. And so then you've got this hybrid. And just in hearing you describe it, it's reminding me how way ahead of its time this game was. Because, most games were action platformers or most games were simulation builders. But, we take for granted these days that there are that modern games are like, oh, in this phase of the game, you do XYZ to gather resources to then upgrade your town. And that's super common. But here we are in 1990 something, 90, 91, playing an SNES game where you had two sides of the coin that, and tell me if this is accurate, what you do in one side of the game affects the other. Like if you you gather resources or gain points to then spend in the town, or is it just clearing paths of monsters? How does that work?
You're pretty much clearing paths of monsters, and then as what's basically happening is as you build the towns up, you basically have your townspeople build fields and workshops and stuff, and they'll produce your resources, just like really any building game, I'm sure. And then you'll use those things for when you have your battles. So when you have your battles, it's really kind of tower defense-esque, really. But I mean, I've never really played a lot of strategy games like this. So that's what I compare it to. But, basically you're trying to protect your temple and your stuff around it by building different types of things. And you also use, each town has its own legendary hero. And they have a little story that you have to go through before they kind of unlock their legendary powers. And then at that point, you can also use them to move around your map and fight for you, as well as you using your miracles. So you can strike a big, group of orcs with lightning or, whatever. But I agree with you in that it was ahead of its time. And so anyway, TLDR, that's what basically made me go, oh, they remade that? That's actually real cool. Maybe I actually will play that, because I have fond memories of this game, not of getting very far in this game, because I don't think I did, but just being kind of like, it was a neat game. I think I'll bite. Yep. So what they did was they redesigned all of the art, and they actually did a very nice job, in my opinion, with the art. It's got a very strong anime bend, which is like a big seller for Switch, I think. Switch games in general. Like there's a massive amount of anime art based games on the Switch store. But yeah, so they gave it some tweaks. The music, which I found very memorable when I played it as a young person, was the same. Great music, and made even better, remade, obviously, and orchestrated and all that stuff. So great music. My only complaint about the game is that as creative as it is, it gets repetitive, which is a complaint of many NES games, really, of the time. If I go back and revisit them, I'm like, God, these were repetitive, but it was a different time, right? Yep. But basically what happens is that in each town, you start with like a blank piece of land, you build on it, you continue to defend the town from monsters you have a little angel that's like your little servant, I guess, and it flies around and shoots monsters for you and just does your errands, does your bidding. And once you get to a point to where the town is built out and you've sealed the monster lairs, you have to go through one last monster lair and clear it out, and then the town is good and that's it. But during the overall building phase, there'll be a couple times where you'll be attacked. Not just by random flying monsters, but by a whole battalion. And that's when you have to use your defense skills to figure out, where do I put my, towers to take down flying stuff? And where do I put my towers to hold back, forces on foot and all that kind of stuff. So it's
Which
fun.
then becomes it's a third spoke of this very dynamic wheel. It's a real-time strategy as a city builder and an action platformer, but also and I don't know if you know this, but I have read little things here and there, and people are alluding to this idea that the remake's fine, it's good, but they added this tower defense thing and that gets annoying, and I'm like, was that aspect of the game not in the original? And I don't know. Do you know?
No, everything that is in this that I've played was in the original game. Cool. Nothing was added additionally. And I think
no additional mechanics, the graphics and sound. So that's 1990 SNES. That's an amazing game.
That's part of the reason why I thought it was so cool at the time. And this is something that I love my entire life. I'd never played anything like it.
Yeah.
So
and
I didn't
there's not a game like that since.
Not really, no. I mean, I was not one of those people that played Actraiser and then went on to be like, oh my God, I love this kind of game, and then played Populous and stuff. I never played any of that. Those didn't appeal to me on their own for some reason. Although to be fair, I've never tried one, a dedicated one. But I do find this game satisfying. It's a very simplified version of that. So the only bad thing I really have to say about the game is the repetitive nature, because what you will basically do is you will, get your blank area, build the town, go through that cycle I talked about. And then when you quote unquote save the town and everybody is safe, you will progress on to a new, you'll, the angel will say, let's leave them in peace. And, you'll go to another area and you'll do it again. And after doing it a series of times, then you'll hit a point where you are going to fight the final evil of the game, basically. And you do that in the side. I haven't gotten to this, but I just know because I read the Wikipedia page. I wanted to make sure that it was it was not changed, and it wasn't.
Yes. Okay.
The whole world is being, attacked by this evil creature called Tanzra, and basically your final, fight is, you, the god, against, Tanzra. But so I haven't gotten to that point. I think I've cleared 3 towns now, and I've been like, okay, it's a little repetitive. I'm going to take a break. On the other hand, it's got a groove where you're like, okay, cool. I'm going to let them build this first. I'm going to do this. Oh, they're going to come and fight us. Oh, okay. And like, as you go, like the fights do get harder. Mm-hmm. So it's not just like, oh, this is boring, I'm going to do this exact same thing over and over.
Yeah. Do you level up your fighter, side scroller fighter guy, or the angel, or do you just have to like get better at the game as you go? Well,
it's interesting you say that. So what you do is you don't level up yourself or the angel. You end up leveling up your legendary heroes in each town. So you get these scrolls, and as they like realize they're legendary heroes and then come like born into their power, you can like give them these scrolls to continue to like level them up. And what's cool is, I think this is really cool, is that when you go to a new town, you can at any time when your town is being attacked, summon one of those legendary heroes from the previous towns. Mm-hmm. You get to pick whichever one you want. So you don't just get stuck fighting with the one that's in your town. Mm-hmm. You get always that pick. So that's kind of a cool, tool.
Yeah. It's a strategic element there that there's some choices to be made as you progress. That's great.
Honestly, despite that repetitive nature of the towns, I have to say that revisiting it has been like super rewarding for me, because I feel like it's a really nice remake of a game that was just truly inventive and unusual in that time period, in a way that, like you said, I don't think I've ever really played anything quite like that before. And I love that there was that kind of experimentation happening in this time period.
Yeah. Yep.
So honestly, like I'm really glad I spent the money on it. I'm really glad they remade it. I would not have thought. It came
out of nowhere. It just dropped. It was
rated.
Sky.
Yeah, it was rated okay at the time. Like it didn't get like crazy high scores. It was like a 7 out of 10 kind of game. You know. But I just remembered it really fondly. So I guess for me, it was just one of those things that was like, oh yeah, I really liked that game. I'm really glad that there's a reason to revisit it. I did not see that coming. I'll tell you that much. I was not they're going to remake that.
Well, that's what I meant. They dropped it at the Nintendo Direct, I think. And it was like, what? Oh yeah, everyone loves that. Like so many people came out of the woodwork and were like, yeah, I rented that from Blockbuster too. That was a cool game, a cool ass game.
Oh, actually, there's one thing that I forgot, and because I looked it up when I bought it, I went to the Nintendo shop like on my computer, not like on my Switch, and there was a little like, here's what you get, new features, and I learned that the original composer, I think his name is Yuzo Koshiro, I think he wrote the original music, and he rearranged and redid the tracks.
Cool.
On the original, plus he added like 24 new tracks.
Cool. For the it's called Renaissance or something. Actraiser Renaissance.
Yes,
is that right?
Actraiser Renaissance is what it's called. But
where
honestly,
are
just
you
having this
it?
Conversation with you is making me want to play it again.
Good.
On Switch.
You got it on Switch, yeah.
I did. Yeah, actually, I didn't realize it. I guess it's on PC too. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I saw it there as well. Indeed.
Nice.
Indeed.
Nice. Yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's just really not. Just like back then, it really isn't like anything that I have played before. So it's nice. And I figured, like I want to add this to my library, even if I don't play all of it right now, like I thought it was very cool what they did.
Yeah. Yep. Where are the Actraiser likes? And there was one fairly recently. I will never remember what it's called. And I do recall people saying, oh yeah, I love Actraiser. This is like Actraiser. That's so cool. And then everyone was like, oh no, this game sucked. Like it did not hit. It did not land. It didn't click for the Actraiser fans. So
sure,
what's better for Actraiser fans than an Actraiser remake? Do you have any memory of Actraiser 2? Because in my mind, when you say Actraiser, I think I'm thinking of Actraiser 2, which in looking back at it is not as critically acclaimed and not as beloved, but I really liked it because the god or the hero, whoever is doing the fighting during the fighting sections, has wings, and so you can kind of fly or float. And I just have very vivid memories of like, in this one you can kick ass and fly. And
wow,
that's coolest.
So cool. I don't think I played Actraiser 2, but I will tell you this. I just looked it up on my phone because I like to get like a visual if I haven't played a game you talk about. And the cover of the SNES game has a little blurb on the right side, and it says this: 100% pure action and excitement. It says that.
It's 100%.
That copy is on the cover of the game. I love that.
That's a statistical fact. It is 100%.
Cool, like, I'm kind of shocked that I didn't ever play this, but I'm guessing I rented a lot of games then, and I'm guessing maybe wherever I rented it, like, didn't have this game.
Very, very pretty, very, very good graphics from what I recall. Really good fighting mechanics, because again, you can't just fly, but you can kind of jump and then hover or float or like dive bomb your enemies, and that kicks ass. I think the criticism of Actraiser 2 is that it just did not go deep, or it did not have the complexity of its forebear, let's say.
Well, but it didn't. I was
expecting.
Isn't it just a side scroller? Like, it's not. It doesn't have the city building, right?
It might not have the city building.
That's what it says.
Be right.
It says it's a side-scrolling platform game for the SNES. So I think that's what happened. They took out those.
Which is
parts.
like, what's the point?
Why would you do that?
That's ridiculous. Why would you do that? So it was very funny to me, because then the direct dropped and it's like, Actraiser's back, and I'm like, yeah. And then I look at him like, where's the wings? Oh, that's Actraiser 2.
You remembered a different one.
I remembered a different one. Yeah. But I'm glad that it's hitting, and I'm glad we're all talking about Actraiser in 2021.
Definitely not what I was expecting. But I tell you what, I probably will return to it, because like I played a few towns through, and then I was like, I might take a break. I kind of feel it's a little repetitive. But now that I'm like reflecting on it and like, to you and talking about it, I'm like, you know what? This really was very pleasurable. Like I'm going to go back to it and see if I can do some more, because I'm now at a point where like the fighting, not tower defense. I don't know what you would call it when like
that's what people are saying. I think that's an accurate
the tower defense
analogy.
Sections. Then like the one I'm on has gotten a bit harder, and I'm like, ooh, okay. I don't really have much skill with that type of thing. So I really am like, I got to go back and think about how I could do this differently. Yeah. But it's making me want to return to it.
Yeah. You're acknowledging that groove that you said, where it's like, hey, this will be repetitive. Hey, this will show its age in some places, but like, like it's sectional. It's hey, we're going to do this fighting, then we're going to go back. Like, even despite the repetition, there's enough variety there that I think it can hold up in a certain, if you're in the right headspace for it. And I think it's also great to come back to it. That sounds right in a modern gaming context of like, oof, this is the same thing over and over again. I'm going to want that again next Wednesday or whatever. I get that. I feel that for sure.
Absolutely.
I didn't love the look of it. I wasn't the cutscene anime stuff looks great. I didn't love the look of the like pseudo 3D graphics or whatever, because it's 2D game. It's a side scroller, but I wasn't in love with the aesthetic of it. And then I could also see like it just looked, I don't know, there's something about the way the frame pacing goes side left to right, side to side. It's just not smooth. Yeah. And I was like, maybe the original one was super janky. And then I went back to look at 1990s SNES footage, and it is buttery smooth. And I'm like, why? Why couldn't we get that here too? I don't understand. It's a 2D game from 1990. We couldn't get it to look as good as the 1990 version. Like, what are we doing here? So as an Actraiser fan, it's a pass for me. But I'm thrilled to hear that you're getting that that what do we call it, that vibe, that satisfaction from it, as a fellow fan. I'm glad you're loving it.
Yeah, definitely loving it. It's good times. So good. What are you playing?
In regards to the Nintendo Direct, which again just fell out of the freaking sky. It was like, tomorrow, tune in at this time, and everyone was like,
whoa.
Okay, I guess I'll mark the calendar. And then it was like literally the greatest Direct we've had in a good long while. I'm pretty sure you noted this. Voices of Cards. Oh fuck! I'm probably saying the wrong name.
I could say a lot of things about that, and I'm just going to let you talk.
Well, did you try? Did you try the demo?
I did, and I was like so bummed because I felt like it could have been a game I really liked, but there was something about it that I just fucking hated, and I was like, I don't know what. It's very hard for me to put into words what about it I didn't like.
Yeah.
Like like, you know how that is when you're like, I like all the elements, and then it comes together and you're like, oh no.
Yeah. Well, I'm eager to hear more about your reaction to it. And I'll say this, hated is a strong word. It's not where I am on it right now. But my criticism of it's beautiful. It sounds good. The art's good. It runs great. It's a really tactile, beautiful game that it has my attention. And I played through the whole demo, and I really liked everything I saw. And then kind of wrapped up the demo and was like, we should back up for anyone who has not played it or seen it. It's an RPG, and it is a Japanese style, anime style looking RPG, but everything is cards. So your characters are cards, your items are cards, your attacks are cards, the landscape is cards, the NPCs are cards, and everything's cards. And it has, and the narration is cards. So every time, literally name anything that can happen or appear in an RPG, a card kind of flips over and shows you what's happening, and things happen. And I think it's like, hey, what if it was an RPG, but it was all tabletop? So there's dice rolling, and there's characters moving along a cardscape. And again, beautiful game. And played the demo and felt that warm RPG blanket from this thing, and then wrapped it up. And I was like, so what's up with the cards? Because literally there is no deck building. There is no card
Which is
drawing.
Interesting.
There's no random card pulling. Like when you say, oh, here's a game and it's about cards, you're like, okay, so I'm going to choose what's in my deck, and I'm going to make sure that the cards are strategically aligned. And it's like, no, when your character levels up, he gets a fireball ability, which is a card. And then you just have fireballs now. And then that does 10 attack, that does 10 damage to it. And you're going through the whole game and you're like, so then it's literally just a basic ass, Final Fantasy RPG from 1989, but it's very pretty and everything's a card. But the cards literally have no effect on gameplay. They just look pretty.
They just look nice, which maybe that's what I'm struggling with. I don't know.
That's my criticism of it, of like, and the story, again, it's like maybe it's an hour demo at most. Basic ass characters, it's like a cleric, a wizard, and a fighter, and they look pretty, but and then it's like the queen lost a treasure, find the treasure, and there's a town and an innkeeper and a fort. It's like, name any stupid trope from a fantasy RPG and it's there, and it's a pretty card, and it's like, so I kept waiting for the strategic elements of a card game to make themselves apparent. And you go through it and it's like, thanks for playing. We can't wait to show you the full game. And you're like, where's the card stuff? Come on, what are we doing here? So all that to say, I enjoyed my time with it. I hope, I'm really not optimistic, honestly, but I hope that there will be more dynamic strategic card elements. But like, if you put out a demo of a game that's coming out in 1 month and it's about cards, wouldn't you have shown me the card stuff? Because if you didn't show it to me here, I don't think it's there.
Yeah, I don't either. And I think, I mean, to be honest, like so funny. Have you ever played a game and you're playing, like, it's the beginning of the game and you're playing the game, and like while you're playing it, like there's a little voice inside you that's like, I don't like this. And you're like, wait. We haven't given enough of a chance. Okay. Let's just hang in. You play for like 60 more seconds. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it. And you're like, oh God, stop. I had to ignore that voice like 10 times because I was like, but it's so pretty, but it's got such, but it's this, but it's that. Yes, it's very pretty. That's very nice. All of that is good. I don't like it. Like, I wanted to like it a lot, and I just didn't.
It's a crime, because imagine if this really pretty, stylish game was also a really good strategy card game.
Yeah.
Because then that's what I kept thinking. Exactly what you're saying, of like, what if this was good? Then it would be like, the next big thing. Seriously. Like, if this game was really good, it would be the hottest shit coming out.
Right.
Seriously.
Right.
It's that beautiful.
It's gorgeous. I think sometimes for me, when a game is super close and it misses the mark, but it's so painfully close to being really, really good, I think that sucks. Like with this, I was like, God, that's so pretty. I love the idea. I love that they decided to do something that, like, is not the same old, like, well, we're going to play the card game, and so we're going to do the thing where all the cards have values and, blah, 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 like, variants of Magic, basically.
Yeah.
So it's like, I love Magic, but at the same time, I'm also like, I like the idea you can do other things with cards. But yeah, so anyway, same feels, slightly different variant of how the feels happen, but same feels.
Yeah, no, I think we're very aligned on our disappointment, but I am looking forward to it coming out and then waiting and reading reviews and discussion to see, hey, maybe they built on these bones or something. Who knows? But I am mentioning it, and I'm really glad you checked it out as well, because I played it, and then I was like, man, I really want to play a strategic card game. This made me itch for a card RPG kind of game. And so I looked through my sort of wish list queue system of like, I want a card game on Switch that I can really dig into. And what I remembered that I had noted previously a while back is a game called Griftlands. Any familiarity?
No.
Griftlands. I'm going to say it up front here. I love this game. I've played very little of it, but I love it. And part of why I love it is it's a really good game. And then I think I also am really loving it because it is delivering the strategic card deck building stuff that I wished the voices of cards. I wished that game had it, and also had the story RPG to go with it. So
yeah,
I'll be brief here because I haven't played a ton, but Griftlands is dope because it's set in this. I wouldn't even call it post-apocalyptic. It's just like this slum city, but it's very alien. It's very Star Warsy, where it's like there's humans, but there's also like, I don't know, giant dog people and lizard men and whatever. So there's like it's a lot of different species kind of living together in this very Mos Eisley kind of world, and it's very stylish. It's all seems to be hand drawn 2D. And why it's dope is you have a deck. You're a bounty hunter, and you're chasing some villain, or you're back in town and you're trying to get revenge on somebody, and you have two decks. One is a negotiation deck and one is a battle deck, physical fighting deck. And the cards, you are earning them and upgrading them, and you encounter situations in this world where it's like, hey, we gotta go on this mission. I'm not gonna go on this mission with you. Fuck you. And you're like, okay, then you're like, convince Liqui to go with you because you need him. And it's like, all right, start the negotiation. And so now you are fighting turn-based. Oh, that's the other thing. I when I was playing Voice of Cards, I was like, I want a turn-based RPG. I want that somehow. I want that back in my life. And so Griftlands is that you have a deck, and then you get 5 cards or 7 cards out of your deck. And so in negotiation, you and your opponent have arguments, right? And that's like almost like your hit points. And your main argument is what has to survive in order to win the argument. But then you can add other arguments in this kind of like cycle of effects or cards that kind of move through. And what you're doing is you're building up, what is it called? Resolve is your hit points, and it's not constitution. It's like, it's confidence or something. It's some other stat where it's like you play a card which can then attack your opponent, but you also know how much damage your opponent is about to do to you. So you can build up like a defensive buff by playing other cards, and you have action points. So each card will cost 1 action point, or it costs 2 action points, or maybe you play a card that costs 1 action point, but then it summons a choice of 3 other cards that all cost 0, and then you can choose which one you want to do. And immediately, they just exactly like you were saying, you're starting a new fresh game, and the voice is saying, no, this sucks. Exactly the opposite here. You hate this. Why is this not working? You hate this. Truly the opposite here. Those games where you start the game, you have no clue what's going on, but you're like, oh yeah. Oh, this is cool. This is, you could do this. Wait a minute. I have no clue what this does, but that's a whole thing that's going to be awesome 20 hours from now. I don't know. This game's rad. That's what's happening here. So, but here's what's cool. The magics of the world, or the slay the spires of the world, it's like, defeat this opponent or defeat this enemy, right? And that's great. And your cards can get very complicated, and that is a pure strategy game. What Griftlands does in a really cool way is like, there's a really good story and a very deep RPG NPC system going on. So you have to make choices to fight certain people, or argue with certain people, or choose sides in an argument. And then what happens is the people that you do right by, they start to like you. And the people who you piss off, they don't like you. So that stuff's happening in the background. And then you're like, I'm going to take on this mission. I got to earn some more money to get some more cards. So I'm going to take on this mission. And you're like, oh, let me fight this, monster. And then it's like, woo, this dude you pissed off is now helping your enemy. And you're like, shit, now this mission that I thought was like a quickie is now very challenging because I pissed off this guy 3 missions ago. It's cool because as you move around the map, you start to see familiar faces. It's almost like a community of NPCs that are moving around. I don't know if it's randomly or what. And then the other thing I don't quite understand is like, this game appears to be run based. So it's like, start your run and then go on the run. I have not died, so I don't know what happens at the end of a run, but like, it's so story driven and it's so like relationship dependent that like, if you die and quote, start another run, I don't know how that works. And to start the story over, like I wonder if there's a Hades thing going on of like, the story does not restart. I don't know what you carry with you, if you carry cards forward into the next run or unlock new characters. I actually don't know. I'm interested to see how that works. I can't speak to it yet, but like, again, really good RPG, turn-based combat RPG, a la, the Final Fantasy, the old Final Fantasies, Octopath Travelers, like really strategic combat, but then also like deck builder. The cards level up. So as you play them, you're trying to play the best card in the most strategic situation, but then there's this underlying layer of like, oh, this card is one, tick away from leveling up. And maybe it's not the best card, but like, I'm going to burn it here because I want to level up after this battle's over. And then the card is like, great, this card is now leveled up. And it randomly spits out, okay, level up, choose A. This card can get slightly more powerful and give you a little bit more defense. Or this card can get super powerful, but if you play it, it's destroyed forever. And you have to choose what to add back to your deck. So I'm actually, I wonder if you'll relate to me on this. Using expendable items in games, especially RPGs, there's some stress there of like the idea. Imagine if you had a magic card in your deck and you love your magic deck, but one of the cards was like, if you play this in any match, you have to tear it up and you can never play it again.
There are cards like that.
Is there really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, there are a few, because I remember my husband telling me about them and me being like, whoa. But yeah, they're because like, I always tell him like, oh yeah, Magic was simple once when I was, a young child and played it. And like at some point when he was like playing more regularly, he was like, yeah, there's like cards, like he was like telling me about crazy like results with cards, and yeah, there's some card or maybe even cards you have to destroy.
That, I mean, and do players respect those words on the card? Like, do they? I mean, you're saving that for the big tournament, and you can only in public. You can only play it once in public, but when you play it, you're going to go big, and then you gotta tear it up, throw it in the fire. That's wild. I've never heard of that. And so maybe, this game is taking a lesson out of that. And what's interesting there's two kinds of destructible cards. One is more like items. Like you can buy cards almost like from an item shop. And it's weird because they go into your deck. So in a deck builder, you're like, these are my cards and I will draw them and I will always have access to them unless I upgrade them or trade them or whatever. But your item stash is also cards, so you can purchase or acquire expendable items. But then, interestingly, like I said, you can upgrade like a regular old attack card to be a destructible card. And again, it goes from doing 3 damage to doing 8 damage, which is a lot in this scale of the game. But it's gone. When you play it once and it's gone. So like, I guess I'm too early into the game to know like the curve of like how do I build my deck? Like how do I balance my deck, and I'm sure I need to bake in disposable cards because those are they can be very powerful and useful, but I have to play them wisely. It's great. Griftlands, and it's a great Switch. It's on everything, a lot of things, most things, definitely on Steam, definitely on Switch, but hanging out on the couch in bed, just doing little card battles and
love it.
Advancing this story. Really love it. And I'm really happy to have found a Switch game that I really, unless it goes haywire, I'm going to be here for a while. I really want to see. I want to jive. Nice. I want to see where this goes. So
I love it.
I really recommend it.
Excellent. I will be looking that one up. Pretty terrific. I just found myself in the last 2 minutes kind of like being like, am I sleepy? I think I'm sleepy. It's 9:06 p.m. I'm sleepy.
You've been drinking something.
I did have a little whiskey, faithful listeners. I did have that, but I'm not drunk. I'm just mildly sleepy.
Well, I'll let you go there, of course, and thank all the listeners for being sleepy with us. We have some. We love hanging out and doing this, and we love talking about games. And I really enjoy. I'm so glad you were like, hey, what if we talk about this big trend in games? The cloud services of the now and the future. I love talking about this stuff, and so that's just us, and we're just hanging, but. We can't share yet, but we've got some really cool ideas and guests and topics ahead of us, and no specific ETA and all that. But we thank you for sticking with us because we've got big plans for this little podcast. So
we sure
thanks
do.
for being part of it. Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
We're gonna get out of here.
let's go play some games.
Let's go play some games. I'm gonna get back to the Griftlands, and maybe you'll revisit Actraiser. I think maybe I'll emulate original Actraiser. You know what I mean? Like maybe I'll go back.
You should, especially since you noted that like it was. I mean, it just would be fun. You know what I love? When a game gets remade, but when you have the ability to play the original game within the remake, or like turn something on. Although I'll tell you what, I pre-ordered, which is weird, right? But I pre-ordered Diablo 2 before the Blizzard stuff went down.
Yes.
And then when it hit, I was like, well, fuck.
Yeah.
And so when it came out, which was last week, I like it, nothing. Like I didn't have it on my radar, nothing. I was like, I don't know about you, Blizzard. I don't feel good right now. Mm-hmm. And then some friends of mine were like, oh, Diablo 2 came out. And it was very grudging. I was like, all right, well. And so I turned it on because I was just like, you know what? It's here, I guess, and I realized that they included the ability to turn on what they call the legacy version.
It's extraordinary. It's I don't own it. I did not purchase it, but seeing how that works, I think that's extraordinary.
It is. And it's also like what a game looks like in your memory that you played when it originally came out, and what it really and what it looks like to you now in person. Yes. Oh my God, are those different things? Like I was like, I feel like this still, when I played the remake, I was like, it feels like an older game. It kind of, it has the controls have some stickiness and stuff like that, right? And then like I was like, well, I'm gonna press that button, and I was like, oh my God. Yeah.
GoldenEye.
Yeah, GoldenEye.
That was the shit.
At its time, right? Like GoldenEye was like, I didn't play it, but like at its time, GoldenEye was like, wow, it looks so good. It moves so fast, right? Like
it was just, I mean, to some of the stuff we were talking about previously, like that was let's get together with friends and play GoldenEye for 12 hours straight, because it was just like, everyone shoot your friends and hide in the map and throw a grenade. And like, that's why it was so fun. And we just we had no frame of reference for how janky it was. And again, we're not comparing GoldenEye to modern shooters. We had no concept of what a Halo could be or a Call of Duty could be. Just compare GoldenEye to, again, like Super Mario Bros. It's just, that's a work of flawless perfection. And GoldenEye was like, we're going to make a shooter in the 64-bit era with polygons, and the tech is not just there yet. Honestly, this conversation is wrapping fully around and eating itself because we're talking about like, the streaming technology is just not there yet. These games kind of suck when they're streamed, and it's like, but this technology will achieve things we cannot even dream of, in the way that tell 12-year-old us that, Halo will exist one day. And you'd be like, what are you even talking about? What is that? That's impossible.
No, you're right. You're totally right. Yeah. I mean, honestly, as much as we might be like, well, it needs to be here, it is kind of interesting and funny to reflect back and be like, we couldn't have even imagined what was coming for us. Yeah. So maybe, in fact, we can't imagine what will come for us in 10 more years. Yeah. And that's an awesome thing,
It's exciting. It's exciting to think about it that way, to not know, because we think we know, we think we can draw a line and trace a trajectory of where things are going, but there will be something, there will be a change, there will be some innovative thing, it's cliche, but like a Breath of the Wild moment. There was just open world games have existed, but then you get this one particular game, and Skyrim changed things too, and Minecraft before it, of like, wow, what if you could build everything and also destroy everything in the world? And this world has never been seen by anyone else. It's unique to you. Like, what? How could that exist?
Don't know.
That's amazing.
But somehow, some way, right?
Yeah.
It's a note of hope.
It's hope and it's excitement. So stick with us. We'll still be podcasting in 10 years from now, assuming podcast still exists. Highly unlikely. We will be sitting next to you in virtual reality, perhaps augmented reality. So look forward to that at the very least. And thanks for chatting. Our theme music is by Azure Flux. Our logo is illustrated by Just Call Me Katarina. And we want to be in touch with you, of course. We have a lovely, spectacular Discord community that is there for all sorts of reasons. Colette's stream and art and other places. But there's a little corner for the podcast too. So we hope to see you there. There's a link in the show notes. You can always get it in the show notes. Come on in. Tell us what you're playing. You probably heard that we chat about your games often. And if you don't want to come there, email us. Have entered the chat at gmail.com. We read every email and we would like to read it on the show with your permission. So send us a note. Tell us what you're enjoying. And if you enjoyed this episode, rate and review on the pod apps. It's super helpful to us. And we look forward to sharing some cool ideas and adventures with you in the future. Final words, Colette.
I got nothing. I'm going to play Actraiser, I think.
Yes. All right. You play Actraiser Renaissance. I'll play Actraiser OG. And then we'll
talk
see.
about it.
We'll talk about it next week
Love
on the chat. Goodbye.
Bye.